Hi everybody. So in today's video, we're going to be diving into the fourth universal law, which is the law of polarity. And these laws are coming from the spiritual philosophical text called the Kybalion. And when you hear people talking about laws of the universe or universal laws or, oh, the law of vibration, this is where it's coming from. So we're going to be diving into the law of polarity, but I have videos on the first three laws as well. So if you'd like to check those out just to broaden your understanding even more, I will leave the links below for those. And I highly recommend it, or just reading the book in general, because when you have a thorough understanding of all of the laws, you really start to kind of see how every law kind of blends into each other and builds off the other laws. So it's really fascinating, and I highly recommend to actually read the book. Quick refresher. First law was the principle of mentalism. So that law pretty much states, okay, our existence, our universe as a whole, everything within existence, it's taking place within a thought of this creator called the All. That's what the Kybalion calls it. Second law is the law of correspondence, which is the famous phrase that you're going to hear people say a lot: as above, so below. What does that mean though? That means all these laws in the Kybalion, every principle, it's applying in higher realms as well as lower realms. So everything that applies here in our reality would also be an application in these higher realms. Everything's subject to the same laws, regardless of where it is in a scale. Man, supposed archangel, subject to these same laws. And then the third principle is the principle of vibration. So we talk a little bit about the scale of vibration, how different things within existence carry different vibrations. We talk about how thoughts carry vibrations. So that is those first three laws. So now we're going to jump into the law of polarity. So this is the main definition of polarity within the Kybalion. So everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. So main takeaway here, every concept has two poles. Let's take a little bit of a visual look at what this could look like. So when we're looking at this picture here, we have the scale of vibration here with the concepts of physical matter and spirit. So physical matter is at the left end, spirit's at the top. But according to this new law now, so according to this law of polarity, spirit and matter are not these separate concepts. So they're differing degrees of the same thing. So everything occurring between grossest matter and highest spirit is just different degrees of vibrations. So the Kybalion also likes to show you how varying poles of a concept is just one concept by talking about different physical concepts within our reality. And one of the really, really great examples of this is with the temperature spectrum. So hot versus cold. So between the two poles of hot and cold, there's many different variations or degrees, but there really isn't hot or cold. It's all just temperature, right? Hot and cold are just two poles of temperature. And a really interesting quote from the Kybalion about this is the higher of 2 degrees is always warmer, while the lower is always colder. So there's no absolute standard. All is a matter of degree. There is no place on the thermometer where heat ceases and cold begins. It could be negative 20 degrees out, and that's really cold, but negative 22 degrees is also cold. So it's all just very relative, and temperature is a really great way of seeing this and visualizing this. And according to the Kybalion, it's all just different vibrations. All these differences between these two poles, just vibrations. And it kind of ties back into that law of vibration, law of correspondence, and all these universal laws kind of like live within one another. And that's why it's just really important to understand all of them to really kind of gain like a thorough understanding of just the Kybalion as a whole. So now this is one of their bigger propositions that I would say carries some of the most weight in the book. So one of their biggest propositions about these concepts, they're saying, okay, verbatim, good and bad are not absolute. We call one end of the scale good and the other bad, or one end good and the other evil, according to the use of the terms. A thing is less good than the thing higher in the scale, but that less good thing in turn is more good than the thing next below it, and so on. The more or less is being regulated by the position on the scale. So then that's kind of a really big proposition, right? So they're pretty much proposing good and bad are but the same concept. They're just different poles of one concept. So other interesting concepts which carry this law of polarization within them are things like love and hate, or courage and fear. So according to the Kybalion, there isn't a thing that could be considered absolute love or absolute hate. It's just two poles of the same thing. One of my favorite quotes actually from the book is, beginning at any point of the scale, we find more love or less hate. As we ascend the scale, and more hate or less love as we descend. This being true, no matter from what point, high or low, we may start. There are degrees of love and hate, and there is a middle point where like and dislike become so faint that it's difficult to distinguish between them. All right, so now let's talk about one of the favorite topics within the Kybalion, which is mental transmutation using polarization of the mind. So they're pretty much saying here, hey, you can use this polarization concept in mental transmutation, and it's pretty much like building off mental transmutation. So we're going from one mental state to another mental state within one concept with two different poles. For example, love and hate. Now, there's a myriad of possibilities within the spectrum of vibrations, though, between love and hate, right? There's millions of like different vibrations within that whole spectrum. When performing mental transmutation, it has to be the same concept, though. So you have to have the two correct poles of the concept in order to do the transmutation. So like, obviously you can't transmute love into east, because it's not part of the, it's not part of the same concept. But this is helpful because if you're trying to do this, it's important to remain in the same concept when you are trying to actually like choose a different thought in the brain. Like if you know you're trying to work from fear to courage, you can then purposely choose more thoughts based in courage rather than like maybe trying to like choose more thoughts based in love, or like another idea that is not the opposition of fear. And so that quote's really important here. The transmutation always being between things of the same kind of different degrees. Or if you know you're struggling with fear, you can then raise his mental vibrations along the line of fear to courage. He can be filled with the highest degree of courage and fearlessness. Now, the next important part here of what they're talking about on every single like conceptual scale, matter related, mental related, whatever. Every concept you ever encounter, each pole will always be a positive or a negative quality, so to speak. So positive and negative will always be ruling these concepts to a level. They say in the book, however, the tendency of nature is in the direction of the dominant activity of the positive pole. Okay, so here's where it can start to get a little bit weirder. This is the weirdest part of polarization, which is kind of paralleling from the topic of vibration and the weirdest part of the law of vibration as well. So the claim is polarization of one's own mind can impact the minds of others. Now, on these mental scales, people supposedly can just polarize their own minds towards a more favorable place on these scales in order to impact the minds of other people. And this is considered to be mental induction. Because if we think back to the law of vibration, we saw that thoughts, emotions, and mental states, they're all carrying their own vibration. So these vibrations can then be thrown off into your surrounding environment, onto the people around you. So now the polarization part kind of adds on to the law of vibration, saying it makes everything get more specific even. You can consciously move your thought up and down one of these scales to very specific places on the scale. So that movement on the scale in a precise way is polarization of your own mind. And supposedly can polarize other people's minds around you. That's the theory. So we have a little example here with a quote from the Kybalion as well. So if you look at the bottom here, we see our mental scientist who's happy, and then there's someone else around him really, really sad. So the mental scientist is trying to polarize within the happy, sad scale within their own mind towards that positive in order to throw off vibrations to that person around him, which will then supposedly polarize that person's mind towards positive as well. So some final thoughts here in the law of polarity. So this is, I feel like, the key findings, the key important concepts within this law. So all states are a matter of degree, which you can change the degree at will and polarize it to what you want it to be. It can cause mastery then of your mental states and also change the states of others. This is also something that can give you a lot of feelings of strength. Like when you think of sitting in fear over something, and rather than being like fear is completely separated from courage and it's this totally different thing that I have to like make a jump to like completely transform myself, like fear and courage are the same concept. It's not about like you having to change from one thing to another. Like the state that you desire to be in isn't this like far off concept, like completely different from what you're already living in. But yeah, choose a different thought. That's my challenge for you after watching this video. Choose a different thought. Thank you guys so much again for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video and you learned a lot, and I hope the PowerPoint format is helpful for you. That is the point of me doing this. I really want you to just have easy access to the information and be able to utilize it in a way to help yourself, help your life, help the lives of others. That is my goal here. So if you enjoyed this and you want to see more of my content, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. And have a good one, guys. Bye.